Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Well, there'll be no special guests stopping by today, but next week we have guests.
Guests galore next week. It's also a holiday week. So
I know.
A few less episodes next week. You don't got to deal with me all week.
No, it's the other way around. Right? You're great to work with. You and Jason kind of dread the whole thing. Let's start with this. I was really surprised when I saw that Michigan is not going to go to court. And they're going to ride this 3-game deal out.
Jim Harbaugh being suspended 3 games, technically yes. Penn State, and then 2 more, plus possible title games.
Yes, so let's put 2 and 2 together and see if we can come up with 4.
Let's see. I think we're 2 smart cookies. I think we can do this.
The NCAA, under how it operates, does not share their information with said school until it's time.
Okay, so who can they share the information with?
They can actually share it with the Big Ten.
And can the Big Ten share it with people?
And the Big Ten can, in turn, share it with Michigan. So when 2 plus 2 equals 4, I'm guessing, as an educated guess, that the Big Ten informed Michigan before the court hearing what the NCAA had.
Sounds about right.
At least to this point, because it's not done yet.
No.
And they sat there and went, oh, my God, and said, forget it. We're not fighting this. And I think that's what happened. There is something there that they were then told. In other words, we're not going to. We're trying to prevent you walking into a courtroom and then getting thoroughly embarrassed.
I think the correct word we're looking for here is they would be screwed.
Right? In other words, you can sit there as attorneys, and you can argue the Big Ten's sportsmanship policy. It's a policy that's been in place since 2013. At least, the current version of it has been in place since 2013. And you can argue a 10-year-old policy, and on policy reasons and holes in it, you can present that argument. Okay? Here's the problem you have after you're done arguing that. It's very difficult to argue, and this is where you get pounded, evidence. You can argue policy, you can't argue evidence. And that, from my vantage point from 30,000 feet, I think that's what we just saw. They were told what the NCAA had and where they're going with this. And Michigan said, we need to stand down. Because the Big Ten did not want to see Michigan embarrassed in a courtroom, which is fine. That's, say, hey, guys, this is what they have. Like, it's your call. Do you want to go in there? It's going to be presented. Because the Big Ten could have sat back and said no and not tell them.
Oh, yeah.
To go to a courtroom, and the drama today would be off the charts because they'd all be sitting there going, you got what? Because Michigan didn't know they had it.
Nope.
Well, now they know they have something. That's a big issue.
It is an issue.
And what it means for the future, I don't know. What it means when everything's revealed, I don't know. What it means for the future of Jim Harbaugh, I don't know. But everyone, of course, talks about the NFL out there and sitting there and lurking.
Yes.
But in putting from 30,000 feet, 2 plus 2 to have it equal 4,
They got something.
They had to have been told something where they sit back and went, oh, no.
I have a question for you. So going on the drama side of things, we're going away from Michigan for now. You and I both consume lots of sports, watch a lot of games. We know a lot of the reporters, whether they're hosts or pundits or whatever, silent reporters as well. I don't know if you and Jason have discussed this, Charissa Thompson's comments.
Oh, sure.
That she, the Fox Sports Amazon Prime video host for some of the games, she went on the Pardon My Take podcast and talked about how she reported, quote unquote, reported things that were made up. Things that she said coaches never said, she made them up on the spot because she didn't have anything. And she said, this is a normal thing people do. And the backlash she has received has been exponential on social media. That every single person I know, because I went to Syracuse and they don't take this lightly, being told, oh, all the silent reporters make things up. Every person's been like, no, we don't. You did. We don't. I guess expound on this a little more. Help me out here. Why would she make things up?
Okay. I have met Charissa Thompson several times. She's been a guest on this show, as a matter of fact. Because at one point she was a BTN sideline reporter. So between football and basketball, she'd be at shoot-arounds, things like that. But here's the only reason to, quote, make it up. You have to come out of halftime with something. So I'm going to come out of halftime with something. In other words, they don't want to hear that you didn't get a chance to talk with, let's just pick one. I didn't get a chance to talk with John Harbaugh. Right? From the Ravens. They don't want to hear that. So, I mean, it's not right. And it's obvious it's not right. Your job is to just do the job. Your job is not to make it up. If you were sitting there and, now you ask yourself, okay, well then how accurate are injury reports? How accurate are something that is related to the game? Credibility means everything in this business. Integrity means everything in this business. Clicks do not mean anything in this business, despite what people in management think. Clicks don't mean anything. Okay? It's integrity, right? And it's your personal professionalism.
It's your ethics.
Right? And when you say something there, it is expected to be correct. And that's, let's just take something like really small. I mentioned a few weeks ago about the Cooper DeJean punt return. Well, because I talked with officials in the off season, which to me is part of my job, I was at least able to give the audience a perspective that was accurate
based on what you've been told,
as to what the officials have told me going into the season as to what they're looking for. Now, did I agree with the call? No, I did not agree with the call. Was it maybe technically correct? Technically, you could make an argument for it, sure. But my job was instead of sitting here and spouting off about it, to then at least lend perspective from, people always say, well, you're not a reporter, you're just a homer and whatever. You have no idea how much, quote, reporting I do, because I take time to talk with people in conversation about what they're doing, why they're doing it. Okay? Why, for example, after talking with Terry Weimer, why do I have a pretty good handle on the block charge rule? Right? Well, that's because maybe I'm not just, okay, that's where the reporter comes out. Right? You take the time to do that. And so now back to her. It's about accuracy And it's about your professionalism and integrity. It's not about filling time because you need to be on camera to fill time. Right? Now, does she do an outstanding job on Amazon Prime in the host spot?
Mm-hmm.
She's tremendous. Right? She's got 4 other people on the set, and when it's a post game, sometimes 5 with a player or a coach. And does the perfect directing, conversation, bringing out the best in people, and she does a great job with that.
Mm-hmm.
Any report that she made up is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fans deserve better than that. They deserve the accuracy of it. And not something that that is just is made up off the cuff. I mean, that's one of the parts I don't like about hot takes. Let's take something like shows about hot takes. Where are hot takes? Well, what are hot takes? Most of it's not real.
Most of it's just an opinion,
right? But it's not. But there's not even a real scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Should the Cowboys trade Dak? I'm like, oh, for God's sake, don't waste my time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when they trade him, we'll evaluate it.
Yeah,
right. So it's your professionalism, it's your integrity, it's being a good reporter, it's your trust. People have to trust what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing that gets me here.
And that violates all of that.
It isn't ethical.
Yeah.
As a student who went through journalism school less than 2 years ago, graduated, a year and a half ago, the main thing they tell you is be ethical. Even if you got to say things that you don't agree with, if it is the fact, you say the facts. Right. You see the facts, you stick to your code of ethics as a journalist, and that is what you do. And this is completely unethical. Basically every reporter that works for ESPN, The Athletic, whoever you can name has come out and been like, this is not normal, Charissa. Right. We don't do this. Molly McGrath said, young reporters, if you're seeing this, it is not normal to do this. Mm-hmm. No one does this but her, I guess.
Right.
That if you do this, you don't take your role seriously.
Okay. So let me... Harry Smith from NBC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And for years was at CBS Morning Show, CBS Evening News. Now he's doing features for NBC. So Harry was here on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I were just sitting there and just chit-chatting for a while. And he was talking about Kaylee Hartung. Kaylee Hartung is the sideline reporter for Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And he said that, and of course his wife, Andrea Joyce, who was going into the National Sportscasters Hall of Fame this year, and she earned her spot. The amount of work that is put in for that. Harry told me he'll go into the kitchen and Andrea has stuff all over the place. Right? He says, Steve, at that point I turn around and just kind of gracefully exit. He says, I know she's on a roll. Right? And Kaylee Hartung will come up with, she took them behind the scenes as to what they do. And she's worked her way up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she has worked her way up, all work. And he was telling me that, he said, she'll have 22, 23, 24 different elements that she's prepared to do because of her work during the week, and may get to 2.
Mm-hmm. Crazy.
Right? May get to 2. And I related to him. I said, it's interesting. I tell my broadcasting class, they'll see, I said, I'll send them what my charts look like.
Mm-hmm.
I said, look, there's all these just in cases on there. I said, but I probably use 2 to 3%. I said, I just don't know which 2 to 3% I use every week.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. That's the amount of preparation that is put in. So if you're putting that kind of preparation in to take care of various scenarios and you don't get the coach at halftime, you have a fallback.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have other things you can talk about.
Yeah.
Al will say, hey, let's go down to Kaylee. And say she couldn't get Zach Taylor last night. Okay, so say she couldn't get Zach Taylor. Instead of saying I didn't get Zach Taylor, he says, hey, Joe Burrow, when he was a kid, grew up here in Athens, and go with one of the stories that she has. And then when we talk to him on Wednesday, I'll bump. Okay. Then you go from there. Right? That's why you do all this stuff. So when something happens and you don't get what you need, you have a fallback that can still make the broadcast accurate and good. That's why there's no need to make it up, because Harry did a good job of really taking me behind the scenes of, he says she really like opened the curtain as to what she does, Steve. And I said, that's amazing. I didn't realize they had that many. I knew they had a bunch of them, but he said they have between 22 and 24 that she's prepared herself.
That's insane.
Right? Because she works that hard. And I'm going to guess that the Molly McGraths and the Jenny Tafts and the Erin Andrews, and the Pam Olivers of the world, do all the same thing. With that said, if I'm Amazon Prime, what do I do with her? I don't do anything with her. I think she's doing exactly what I need her to do, because in that setting, right, she is anchoring and getting other people involved. And in a world where everybody wants people fired, I'm sick of that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, now, trust is going to be important.
It is. Big time. And she lost a lot of trust in people, or people's trust in her.
Right.
It's gone.
And again, and I've been around her several times. Did I like her? Yeah, I liked her. I got along with her great. Okay, fine. And she'd ask me a couple, hey, Steve, what about this? What about that? I go, I'll tell her, okay, bam, 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 right? Because that's her trying to do homework. I got it. But you can't have. I remember, I think it was, who was the analyst who said, we talked with Sam Weish on Thursday.
Oh.
This is way back. And they hadn't had a single conversation with Sam Weish. You can't do that. You can't do that. I can't sit there and say on our broadcast on Saturday, well, I said, I was talking to Greg Schiano earlier in the week. I haven't talked to Greg Schiano. I haven't talked to Greg Schiano in years. Right? Now, do I know him and like him? Yeah, because he was on the staff here, and I knew him and liked him, and, right? But I haven't talked to him in years, so I'm not going to get out there. He says, I talked to Greg Schiano this week. He really likes Kyle Monangai. That's a lie. Now, could I say it and people would think I did? Of course they would, but it's not accurate. That's why I would never say it. There's no need to say it. There's no need. If you're doing your job right, there's no need to embellish. Right? Because trust has to be earned. And trust is earned over time. And trust them, so you get trust from the audience, which then leads to the next step, which is integrity. And you can't do this.
No.
And this is a valuable lesson for students. Right? You can't do that. And I have a number of students in my class that have, I always say to them at the beginning of the semester, okay, your name, your hometown, your favorite teams, and now what would you like to do in the industry? Goals. Yeah. And I've got maybe 3 to 5, just off the top of my head. I have 20 in the class. 3 to 5 that said they wanted to be sideline reporters.
Yeah.
Well, this is invaluable.
On what not to do.
Invaluable lesson for them. And Michelle DeFoya, who did this for years, said, quote, Charissa is a nice person, but this is professional fraud. If a coach won't talk to you at halftime, you say that. And if there's no report, then you just don't file the report at halftime. It's pretty simple. Journalistic integrity is paramount. In other words, let's go down to Kaylee Hartung. Al did not get an opportunity based on the circumstances to talk to Zach Taylor. He says, but, earlier this week we talked to Zach about how, the development of Joe Burrow and how, and then related to what happened in the first half. Something that you can put 2 and 2 together and still do a report. Andrea Kramer, I'm sickened by the insulting mockery being made of sideline reporting, a challenging role primarily manned by women, most of whom understand and respect the values of journalism and are integral, trusted members of a broadcast team, which is absolutely true. I've never met Andrea Kramer. Holly Rowe, there cannot be a nicer person on the planet than Holly Rowe. And not only that, Holly Rowe, Todd Blackledge told me this, because she was with Todd's team for a period of time. I think it was Sean McDonough, Todd, and her, I think, if that the combination sounds right. He said, Steve, she's in there watching tape with us all the time. So she's doing everything she can to really know everything about what's going on. That's how hard these people work, right? It's hard. And I think that you can't have this kind of you just can't have this backhand to information. You can't have that. Now, will there be people that call for firing? There are people call for everybody's firing. Yeah,
of course.
It's like, okay,
Yeah. They're not calling for mine or yours, but we're good.
Oh, believe me, there are people. But you don't think there are people on the face of the earth that like sit there and go, I don't want him doing the games. It's like
I mean,
fine.
Yeah. They want Jerry Valeri doing it. Come on now.
That would probably
be interesting.
Cement my spot. No,
it would.
Yeah, because you can't please everybody.
No, you never can
please everybody. But something like this, like when Jack Ham says something in the broadcast, do you trust it? Yeah, 100%. If Brian Tripp says something in the broadcast, do you trust it? 100%. If Dick Girardi says something in the broadcast, you trust it 100%. And I would hope after all these years when I say something, I mean, I'm not out there making it up.
It's coming from a place of knowledge and a place of understanding.
Or, you're trying to be accurate. I mean, do you make a mistake once in a while with a player identification or something? Of course you do. You're 200 feet above the field.
Except for you when it comes to 8+ laterals, then you make 0 mistakes.
I got fortunate with that. But, I mean, you expect it to be right. And you can't do that. And especially right now.
There's just, it came out of nowhere, and that being a part of all of the different things going on in the world was just like why are you saying this? Why are you making things up? Just don't. Please don't. And I know this comes like a day after Ed Cooley, the head coach at, where does he coach now? He's Georgetown.
And I've dealt with it. I did a TV game with Ed when he was at Fairfield.
Yeah.
He is a great guy to talk to. And you can just sit there and ask him anything. I can tell you, because I did. I said, well, what about this? What about this? Well, how do you want to attack this? He's very direct.
And he came on after Georgetown's game and said, hey, if you are a young reporter who is here, ask me questions. Don't come in and just sit. Come with questions and ask me, and I owe you an answer. And everyone was praising him, because it's like, yeah, that's what you should be doing. There are college students at Georgetown who are trying to do journalism, who want to sideline report and report on basketball, and they come to these games to talk to him, and a lot of them don't ask questions because they're scared. They're like, he's a professional. I shouldn't be asking him this. I'm terrified he's going to shout at me. And then he comes out and is like, no, ask me the questions. If I answer it angrily, it's because I have to answer it angrily, because we may have made a mistake, or a player may have had an issue, or whatever it ends up being. So I owe you an answer. So ask me questions. And from that positive high of him to the opposite end of the spectrum with Charissa Thompson was a duality of what is going on here.
Well, but what was the key to what Ed Cooley said? Ask me questions. Don't make statements. It's not your job to make statements. It's your job to ask questions. As many, you can't avoid sometimes a yes or no type of question, but ask as many what or why questions as possible.
Make them open-ended.
Right? And let them, and then listen. Listen to the answer. It's a skill that has to be developed. We're doing a segment this week on interviews in class. And I said, when you ask questions, I said, how many of you sit there? I said, please be honest about this. And you're concentrating on the next question. And almost all of them put their hands up. I said, of course you did. Because again, you don't want to be caught off guard. You want to look like you know what you're talking about. I said, you don't want the audience to think you're stumbling or searching or whatever. And I said, that's natural. I said, that's natural, especially at your age and your stage of your career. Absolutely natural. Okay? I said, you will then develop an ear where you're thinking a little bit about the next question, but you're listening to the answer you're getting, which then opens the door to the possibility of, you know what, I need to follow up on what he or she just said. I said, and then you go in that direction. I said, it takes time. I said, it'll slowly happen to all of you. I said, and it'll make for a better interview. I said, between now and then, it's fine. Stick to the script. It's okay. Stick to the script. And look, are there times that I'll ask a question, I'll sit back and go, well, that was one of the stupidest questions on the face of earth. Or, you know what, I should have asked a different question. Or I phrased it poorly. You know, the number of questions I have to ask during the course of the year.
It's a lot.
I mean, between interviewing people on a show, you'll hear some of the interviews next week, as a matter of fact, that I've already done. But between interviewing for the show, doing the talk show with James on Thursday, doing the pregame show with James on Thursday, doing the quarterback club with James on Wednesday, doing the player interviews with the players on Wednesday, doing the pregame show with Mike Rhodes, doing the postgame show with James, doing the postgame show with the players, doing the postgame show with the basketball players, doing the postgame show with Mike. How many questions during the course of the week do I ask? And
2, 3.
And guess what? Right? Not every one of them is like you walk away and go, well, I really hit that one. I walk away and go, like, cripe, that wasn't very good. I'll sit there once in a while and I'll sit there and go, okay, so I should have, okay. Like the first question was pretty good, and the last two were like, lame. Didn't do enough to help out, the people listening, or maybe even the subject you're talking to, whatever it may be. But you still ask as many what and why questions as possible, with the idea of letting the individual, he or she, talk. All right. And go from there. You try to be as informed as possible. And back to the Kaylee Hartung story, as Harry Smith was telling me about the number of items she has and is prepared in case they are needed. And she'll only get to 2, maybe 3 during the course of the night. That means 21 are left on the table. And they're not things that carry over to the next week, because next week's game is not the Bengals and the Ravens.
Yeah.
Right? Next week's game is not the Bengals and Ravens. So the other 20 to 21 that she had prepared that she couldn't use on the air,
gone.
Now, the other part, too, is you may have something like that. Hey, we'd like to do that here. Oh, wait, Joe Burrow has a wrist injury.
That matters.
Well, guess what? We have to talk about Joe Burrow's wrist injury. Your little piece on Jamar Chase, shelved. Gone. Because now, because of the way the game's played out, this takes precedent. And with her saying that she made stuff up, I'm sorry, there's no need for that.
Speaking of Blech and what's going on here.
I hope I answered that.
No, you did. You very much so did, because I saw that and was like, this is something I want to ask you about. I know we talk a lot about reporters and sports stuff that goes on here, because you know a lot, and it's interesting to hear and discuss these things. And something that we can discuss a little bit. I know you don't cover them. You're not the main broadcaster, but women's basketball currently, not just Penn State, but in general, the top 3 teams this season going into the year, UConn, LSU, and Iowa, through 3 games have all lost a game.
You doing women's basketball?
Women's basketball.
Yeah,
Iowa lost last night. Right. UConn and LSU each lost last week.
Yeah, but that's good for the sport.
It's great for the sport
because one of the problems the sport has had over a long period of time is that the top
4 to 5 teams.
I was going to say the top 6 or 7 teams go through the season and they win big. The only time they lose is when they play each other.
Or UConn, who won, I believe it was 4 straight years they didn't lose a game. Right. I mean, I was a resident of Connecticut, and it was the whole thing of like, they never lose. They won over 100 straight games, and that's just ridiculous.
Because I know Kansas State beat Iowa. And there aren't, and Angel Reese is benched right now for LSU, coming off the bench, not starting. Caitlin Clark and that group lost to Kansas State. Paige Beckers is back, but they didn't win. Well, actually, to be honest with you, that's good news for the sport because it's showing that there might be more depth in the sport because that is what it has suffered from the most over the years, the lack of depth. I mean, Tennessee didn't fall back until Pat Summitt stepped aside. And that's really when change happens in the sport is when somebody steps aside. I think South Carolina is the only one of the group that hasn't lost yet.
Yeah, but it was
but they went through last season, then they were beaten by Iowa, and it's good for the sport because the sport needs that.
It is, and I just thought that was so intriguing that they all lost week 1 or week 2 or within the first few games. They all lost. Because, as you said, we kind of don't see this in women's basketball often, where it's usually UConn, South Carolina, Notre Dame. Now LSU is getting really good. Like, there's a certain group of teams every year are there. It's like in men's basketball. You always expect Kentucky, the Blue Bloods. You expect Kentucky. You expect Duke, UNC to just be in the tournament and just be there all the time. And when they lose, it's like, oh, interesting.
Right.
And it's enjoyable.
But again, it's the sport needed it.
Very much so.
And it also puts them, it also tells you that the sport has some much needed depth to it, that there's some good teams. That's why the Lady Lions started 4-0 is now becomes even more impressive. They beat St. John's. They beat Kansas. That's really good. It's exactly what they needed to get started. But overall, nationally, well, guess what? That's a really that ends up being a top. I mean, it makes the sport better because now instead of like, all right, UConn's playing and pick team. Well, they're ranked 15th. Like, no, it doesn't really matter. They're going to blow them out. There you go.
Yeah. And speaking of weirdness, this is a fun day of asking you about topics you may have seen. Are you at all going to pay attention to the F1 being in Las Vegas this week?
The F1 being in Las Vegas, I talked with some friends last night about this. And I don't get what they're doing. First of all, you're using the strip as part of the part of the course. It's Las Vegas. Do you know how busy it is? Always?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
And at least Miami, it was created and it's like on its own somewhere. Yeah. But Vegas, it's through the streets, and part of it is that there are drain covers all over the streets. And this became a story last night because they said, oh, we're going to bolt these drains down. There's going to be no issues. What happens the first time a car is on the track? Carlos Sainz for Ferrari. What happens? Drain cover gets loose. Could damage the underside of the car. All of a sudden, bam. Issue. $500 million to have it in Las Vegas. And they couldn't get through practice without an issue happening. This was expected by everybody. They what they built new bridges. They cut the trees down. They've been blocking off every bridge so you can't see because the F1 is so protective that you can't see. Like if you're walking by it, if you're a pedestrian who like, I want to go to the Flamingo today, you're walking over a bridge. The bridges are like blocked off, so you just can't see the race at all. It's crazy.
The reason they're doing it is so you can't
record or anything.
Steal a ticket.
Yeah,
right,
but it's wild what is happening in Vegas, and I am expecting there to be more issues, which is bad because of course I want the sport to be here more in the U.S. I know Miami went well, and a few other places have been involved, but it's an issue. But Vegas has had a week of sports things going on. So,
yeah, that's. We were talking about it last night. All of us said the same thing. It makes no sense. Let's just talk from a pure traffic point of view. What are you doing? You're going to tell everybody they can't go down there? What are you, nuts?
It's like if we're saying in State College, hey, we're going to shut down North Atherton for the day. See ya.
I mean, if I'm Paris, I'm MGM, I'm the Wynn, I'm the Bellagio, I'm Caesar's Palace, I'm sitting there going, what are you doing? I would have told them no. Now you want to bring in the NHL, Major League Baseball, the Raiders, whatever, eventually an NBA team. All for it, right? Not this. And it's not like when the professional golf tour comes in and plays. There's already a golf course there. Okay. No. It's no sense.
Yeah.
No sense.
But speaking of no sense, and Vegas at the same time there, the Athletics. The Athletics being in Vegas, the vote has happened, and they are going to be homeless for 4 seasons. Now, this got me a little bit. Now, it's the first time I'm talking to you about it. You may have talked about it yesterday with Jason, but the Vegas Athletics, I guess now, there's 2 A with an S team in Vegas now, the Aces and the Athletics. They both have a very similar name. It's kind of funny.
Well, one's the major minor league baseball team. So,
well, I'm talking about the Vegas Aces, like WNBA.
WNBA. Yeah.
But now the Athletics are not going to have a home for 4 seasons. Right. They're going to play in their AAA team, their site, and they're going to play in Oracle Park, where the Giants play, and a few other locations, and possibly also in the Oakland Alameda Coliseum, which I've been trying to wrap my brain around this. And their thing is like, oh, the Blue Jays did it, so it worked. The Blue Jays did it during COVID because if not, they physically could not play in Toronto.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to by law because Canada was like, no, you can't travel over the border. So they played in Buffalo.
Well, here's the bottom line. I think, isn't the Vegas team the Mets?
Maybe we'll find out in a second.
I think they're the Mets AAA team or something like that.
The Las Vegas Aviators is the team we're thinking about, and they are the AAA Athletics team.
Oh, the AAA Athletics?
So where is this team going to go?
Yeah, but this is I put the A's there.
Yeah. Well, that's what they're putting them there temporarily for the time being.
Just put them there and just play, build a fan base, go from there. What the heck? You're not going to draw anywhere anyway.
They're located in Summerlin South is where they are located.
Yeah, I know where that is. Yeah.
Just
it's a mess.
It's a mess, and they're acting like, oh, we're gonna be good now. And I love that there was a point apparently in these meetings, in the MLB meetings, where they said if Taylor, I believe it's Taylor. Who's the owner's name for the Athletics?
Is it Fisher?
Fisher. If I think it's Jeff Fisher, if he is to sell the team within like 10 years of them moving, he's got to pay a ridiculously high tax rate to the league because they're like, you're going to try and sell and we know you are. So we're not letting you do it until 10 years have passed. And for those wondering, the Las Vegas ballpark is a 10,000 seat stadium.
Good enough.
So,
play there.
Honestly, that may not fill up completely for Athletics fans.
I mean, good enough, play there. I know the problem's going to be the heat because it's what they're going to build is going to be a 33,000 seat dome.
It's going to be like Chase Field in Arizona. It's going to be similar to that,
and that's because of the heat. and the heat would end up being the biggest problem. Maybe that's why you don't want to play every game there. I don't know, but that's something that should be at least discussed. But this is okay. It's interesting. I was talking in the hallway, and this always comes up with coaches. I want this guy out, and of course your first. Well, what are your options? Well, no, but I just want him out. No. You have to have, okay. Well, this is the same thing with the A's. Because we're moving. Okay, well, exactly what's your plan now?
Yeah.
And you're sitting there like, we're approved. What's your plan? You just can't sit there and say, okay, now what do we do?
By the way, is John Fisher is the owner's name.
Okay.
That's who we're looking for here.
So there was a movie years ago with Robert Redford entitled The Candidate. Young guy running against the established, much older, right? And he's got handlers, and he's good looking, dynamic, charismatic, and there's run, and strategy, and hey, here's our policy on this. You have to state it this way, and here's our policy. You got to state it that way. Whole thing. He wins. He looks at the campaign manager and all of his handlers, and he says, "Okay, what do we do now?" Well, that's what happened. The A's have been working so hard to move, convince Major League Baseball we're going to do it, convince the state of Nevada to do this, convince them to get $350 million from the state of Nevada, even though the teachers union is taking the court over it. And now that it happens, and they're looking around now and saying, okay, great. Now what do we do?
John Fisher is his name. He has owned the A's since 2005 when he bought them. Can you tell me what the highest ranking payroll he has had was in his tenure?
In terms of like 1 through 30?
1 through 30. Give me the top number he hit payroll-wise.
I'll say 24.
18. But that was back in 2007. He was 2005 and 6, 19th, 2007, 18th, and since then, they have not been above 23. They have been 27th, 27, 26, 23, 30, 27, 23, 26, 27, so on and so forth the past 2 years, bottom of the league. Right. So they're like, oh, this move to Las Vegas will solve all of our issues. No, it won't, because your owner doesn't do anything.
Right.
He doesn't want to give money to help the team be a team. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? This has been a thing that has been heavy in sports recently. Has been the owner. A lot of owners people have been trying to push them out across all of sports. It's a big thing in soccer of like, if the owner doesn't invest, we don't want him here. There's overinvestment in some teams, but there's also underinvestment. As an Arsenal fan, Stan Kroenke, the guy who owns most of the Denver teams, also owns Arsenal, and he didn't invest for years in the team, and we were like, we want him out. And finally, he invested, and look what happens. We're a good team now.
And while for the most part I agree with that, Major League Baseball, I mean, the Texas Rangers winning was a bailout. Why do I say that? When you have teams 27, 28, and 29 in payroll having phenomenal seasons, or one of them having a better than expected season, that's the Pirates. Tampa Bay and Baltimore being the other two. And you have the Mets, the Yankees, and the Padres not making the playoffs, who are right up in the top 4 in payroll. Bob Nightingale, who was on this show, said to us, he said at the All-Star game, he said, I was talking with the Players Association people. They were worried. The reason they were worried was The reason they were worried was that we were telling teams in the offseason, if you spend money, which they did, it'll help you be in the mix to win it. He said, and now we see 27, 28, and 29. Two of them were locks to make the playoffs. The other one's playing way better than expected. Mm-hmm. And you've got teams 1, 2, and 4 in payroll, not even close to
knocked out by August.
Knocked out. He says, and they're worried about it. Now, Texas winning. Texas did spend some money.
Semien, Seager.
Well, even more than that. People forget who's their opening day pitcher. Jacob deGrom. Everybody forgets that deGrom was on that team because he had to be shut down.
Yeah.
When they needed to acquire a Max Scherzer, they did it. There's a lot. So they put money in to bring the franchise back from a 102-loss team to being a world champion. And also, by the way, Bruce Bochy didn't come cheap.
Mm-hmm. It's a good coach.
So they invested in that team. They invested money to make them better. The Phillies have invested money to make them better. At some point, the Pipers are going to be calling for the Braves because that young team
is going to get pricey.
It's going to be pricey. But you know what? You get the feeling that they're going to.
They're going to pay,
right?
Because if it's going to work, they'll pay for it.
Right, exactly. But that is, in the end, what is, what the Players Association is banking on is like, okay, see, Texas won. Now, Arizona being there, it's not a high payroll team. They made it. So now teams have to make money. Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. They gave Deshaun Watson a guaranteed contract, every dime guaranteed, structured in such a way where during the suspension he wouldn't be hurt as much, the whole deal. He hasn't performed at the level they hoped he would, and now he's hurt now for the year with the shoulder.
And they're bringing in Joe Flacco.
Right? But, all right, okay, the Giants gave Daniel Jones all that money. Man, okay. Yeah, just because you're doling out money, you have to be smart about how you dole it out. Right? For example, need to have him, 1994. We're going to get Mark Messier, worth every dime. Because that guy is not influenced by money as to how he plays. Bryce Harper is not influenced by money as to how he plays. Bryce Harper plays the game beautifully, plays it right. Right? You're the Philadelphia 76ers. You invested a lot of money in Ben Simmons. Okay? You invest a lot of money in James Harden. Right? Again, you have to be smart as to how you pay it out and to whom. Right? The Celtics felt great about Jaylen Brown, so they kept Jaylen Brown. They're going to give even more money because it's going to go up again to Jason Tatum.
The Knicks said, you know what, really, you want Jalen Brunson. Right. And they invested money. And
Brunson's been tremendous for them.
Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo. They're investing in players they think can help them win and do well.
Milwaukee with Giannis and then bringing in Damian Lillard. Okay, and they already had Chris Middleton under.
And they just paid Brook Lopez a boatload to stay there because he was offered a lot to go to Houston.
Right. So this is...
it's just a thing that they're like, oh, being in Vegas will solve a lot of our issues. We'll have more fans and stuff. Well, the problem wasn't your fans. The problem was you, and the organization was run poorly. Right. That's the issue with him, is that he doesn't help the organization run well. A lot of times some owners will kind of like help out where they can, and it'll help. There's just issues. There's issues with the Oakland A's that are not going to be solved or ever be solved. But my question to you now, based on off of that, because I don't think we ever discussed this, was Kim Ng, the now former Marlins GM,
excuse me,
was resigned because she found out the Marlins were going to bring in someone above her to run the team, even though she just ran the team back to in their first or second year to the playoffs.
Right.
And they said, we're going to bring somebody in over you. And she was like, huh? Excuse me? One of the best. She made great trades, great signings, great everything. And now she's on the market. Someone's going to hire her, right? I'm not being psychotic thinking that. Like, she's as good as they get. Imagine Oakland or Las Vegas now would bring her in.
Right. Well, again, what kind of latitude do you have from your ownership?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go with Chaim Bloom. Comes in from Tampa. Red Sox usually are among the top 5 in payroll.
Mm-hmm.
This year, the Red Sox were 15th in payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Were they competitive? Sure. Were they good? Not really.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we're going to do it this way. Well, in Boston, you don't do it that way.
Mm-mm.
I realize your owner is trying to save up money for his NBA expansion fee in Las Vegas. I got it.
Ask LeBron for some change. He'll help out.
But that is that's a case of they didn't spend the money, and they're not getting the results. And you can always make arguments about developing your own talent.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore's a perfect example. The Orioles. Every league is built differently. The NHL, you can build some talent, make some trades, the whole thing. The NBA, it's all about max contracts and how many max contracts and the structure of the cap and the whole deal, building around a star or multiple stars. The NFL is about, let's say, how well you draft, and then how do you fill in the spots around it when you're done drafting. And Major League Baseball, I think a lot of it's about payroll and about your farm system and the combination of the two.
Mm-hmm. I think the big part of this and the crux of it with everything is the idea of a floor. And people may not understand what that is. And we've only got a few minutes left here, but a lot of sports like the NBA, NFL have a payroll floor. You got to meet the bare number here to be a team. You can't go under it. You got to hit that.
Yeah.
So the NBA now, I think it's like 80%, I believe, as they brought it up to the floor of the normal salary cap. So if it's 150, you got to pay 80% of that, whatever that number is, 100, 110, whatever. And if you don't hit that number, you owe the players all the rest of the money, so they get paid at the bonus. The Thunder did it 2 years ago.
Right.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, great season. Thunder were terrible, but he walked away with $1 million at the end of the season as a check because the Thunder were like, yeah, we messed up.
Right.
MLB doesn't have that. They don't have a floor. They don't have a ceiling. These teams go into luxury tax, but there's no hard cap.
Right.
And that is MLB's part of that issue with the Marlins, because they can spend as little as they are because there's no floor. They can keep costs as low as physically possible. The Athletics, the Rays, the Orioles, and then piece out of players that are going to get paid a lot of money. They let go of Giancarlo Stanton. After they decided to finally pay him, then they let go of the Yeliches of the world and get them out of the door before they get paid. And they never have to pay if there's no floor.
One other note on Michigan football.
Oh.
Chris Partridge, their linebacker coach, was fired today.
That's interesting.
Yes. Now, this comes after, again, that chain of NCAA tells Big Ten tells Michigan, hey, you want to go to court, it's up to you, but this is going to come out in court. I'm telling you, this is a reasonable
progression of things happening.
And then now, today, Chris Partridge gets fired. Ross Dellinger, SI.com, tweeted this just a little bit ago. Michigan leaders were presented with new evidence this week in the NCAA's investigation into its advanced scouting scheme. And sources tell Dan Wetzel and me that me being Ross Dellinger. The materials presumably have altered its approach. dropped its legal action versus the Big Ten, and today it fired Chris Partridge.
Yeah. This is about to get real serious real fast.
Now, remember, if the NCAA presents them with allegations, they have 90 days to respond. So don't expect anything accelerated here because there's a 90-day window to respond. So keep in mind. Pete Thamel, his tweet, the actions of Michigan in agreeing to discipline and fire Chris Partridge mark a sea change in how the institution has viewed this investigation. Information gleaned in NCAA interviews led in part to the acceptance of the Big Ten decision in today's firing, per ESPN sources. So, as Santa Ono said, let's let due process play out. You know what? I agree with him.
Oh, boy. Next week's going to be fun, though. It's going to be a fun holiday week. A lot of interviews, a lot of people coming on here. It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good week. It's the holiday season, Steve.
As long as I'm on that 3:40 flight to Detroit on Thanksgiving, it'll be fine.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a 7 Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer, Steve and Kyle